Okay, today I'm going to show you how to do a sample of gathering. Here are directions, and the first thing says to cut a 4x6 and an 8x6 square. And that's what we're going to use to demonstrate a gathering technique. So this is approximately 8x6 and this is approximately 4x6. These are stencils that I had already. So I'm trying to make my life easier. So I'm just going to trace these and then I will cut them out. So gathering is the idea of making one fabric, which is larger, smaller by adding like ruffles into it. It's not the technical definition, but that's the idea. And you see gathering in lots of different places, such as on a skirt that's attached to a bodice, or on ruffles that are maybe trimming a shirt or a skirt. And gathering is very similar to easing, which we do when we put sleeves in. So the idea is that you're going to take this piece and you're going to gather it, so ruffle it up so that it fits on this piece. And then you have something straight attached to something ruffly. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so our directions say to sew a basting stitch along the 8-inch, the larger piece of fabric. So that longer side of the larger piece of fabric at a 3/8 inch seam, which is about the edge of the presser foot. And then it says to make sure to leave the threads long. Now, a basting stitch is simply a longer stitch. So we're going to turn our length down to a 5, and then I'm on the long side of my bigger piece of fabric, and there's no need to backstitch. I'm going to start closer to the edge since I'm not backstitching, and lower my needle, and I am accidentally sewing along the tape as normal, which is kind of funny because that's our next step. So let's just pretend I did the second line, and I'll kind of reverse. So I'm leaving long tails, got long tails, and I sewed it at 5/8 inch. The next step says to now sew a line at 5/8 inch. So since I already did that, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the 3/8 inch seam. However, just so you know, you are sewing both. So if you look at this picture, it shows one at 5/8 inch and one at 3/8 inch. I just went out of order. And I think so much of it is habit. You know, we're used to sewing at that 5/8 inch mark. So I'm going to now sew at the edge of the presser foot at 3/8 inch. And it's hard too, out of habit. I usually start in a little ways, but I need to start back so that I have my thread going all the way to the edge and I'm not back stitching. So then I'm going to leave my tails long and trim. The next step says to take the bottom thread, so it's kind of like a little bit confusing. Here's my top threads, here's my bottom threads, and it says to gently pull them, and when I pull them, it makes it gathered. And the nice thing is you could pull from either side, especially on a longer piece of fabric, so that you can distribute your puckers or your gathers evenly. You don't want on a dress or anything really to have uneven gather amounts. And a lot of times we accidentally pull this amount up too far. Remember, start easy because we only need it to be 4 inches across. So I did a little too much. I'm going to just gently pull these apart and spread them out so that it is 4 inches like this. It looks like I need a little more here. So pulling on this one. The reason we have 2 is it more evenly pulls, and then it also helps in case one breaks, we don't lose all our puckers. So you do want to be gentle and slide these around till they're even. And then when they are even, the final step says to place the right sides together. And again, you know me, always pin at the ends first. So I'm gonna fit the corners together. My right sides are together. And then I'm going to do the other corner. And you can adjust by pulling up or loosening your basting as needed. And then I'm making sure my edges are even. I'll put one more pin in. You notice I'm pinning perpendicular to the cut edge. And then I'm going to sew these together at 5/8 inch. However, I want this to be permanent. I'm not basting anymore, so I'm turning it back to 2.5, and I am going to backstitch. So I'm backstitching first, and then sewing at 5/8 inch along the tape. Keeping my edges even. So, and backstitching. And then when you are finished, you will trim all your threads nicely and make sure that you pull out any basting that is showing. So here's my straight edge, here's my pretty gathers, and they're pretty even. That's something you want to always work on. And then any basting stitches that are showing, you can actually use the safety or the seam ripper and pull them out. It's not going to affect the construction. It's just going to make it more visually appealing. So we'll trim all the threads, get out all the basting, and that is your gathering sample.